If you are looking for software to create 2D animations and motion graphics, Cavalry really is the best choice. Even as someone who used After Effects for multiple years to tackle these kind of tasks, I have to say that Cavalry feels more like an upgrade rather than an alternative. And the best part is, there is a free version. However, there's one point that breaks the deal for many, which is the pricing of the full version. But before we get to that in detail, let me tell you, I've been exclusively using the free version and am completely happy with it. One thing I've noticed when people were on their way to learn After Effects is that they seem to be completely overwhelmed by the UI. This might result from After Effects' versatility of features. In Cavalry, on the other hand, the whole software revolves around creating 2D animation and motion graphics. So if you're expecting the compositing or 3D features from After Effects, you're gonna be disappointed. But if you were looking for 2D motion graphics software, you should get Cavalry immediately. Usually, whenever you look for software alternatives, they have an incredible bloated UI. But with Cavalry, I always feel like every developer on the team is low-key an UX designer. It's been so easy for me to pick up the software, and yet it still has a lot of depth to it. It's really hard to put it into words, but the software feels more interconnected to itself than others. Because many times when I was working on a project, I was thinking to myself, this probably won't work, it can't be that easy. But then it just worked. For example, I wanted an animation to constantly loop, and in After Effects you would now have to add an expression to do that. In Cavalry, you just right-click the last keyframe and select loop after. This might sound like a super basic operation, but I am amazed at how easy it is to access in comparison to other softwares. The developers for once really made the UX easy enough to get into for new users and complex enough for advanced users. Like by just using your mouse to click things and drag them around, you can create quite complex looking animations. And if you're advancing in the software, you will learn to use more hotkeys. Like my absolute favorites are these to add a scaling or transformation keyframe to your current selection. Also, if you're switching from After Effects, some shortcuts are similar. For example, Ctrl-K opens up the composition settings. I also feel like the easing options are the best ones I've encountered so far. And the names they've picked for these interpolations make more sense to me than in other softwares, because they are named after the principles of animations like anticipation and overshooting. As far as I know, those terms originate from the Disney book Illusion of Life, which is kinda known to be the Bible of animators. I don't know if I would call it that, but yeah, it's a well-known book among animators. Also, the workflow with things like duplicators or the auto animator is just a huge time save. And for text animations, you can also just apply one of the presets and then further customize it by selecting an easing of your choice. I'm mostly using Cavalry to add motion graphics to my YouTube videos, as the options for that in DaVinci Resolve are still pretty limited or harder to use. I especially use it to make parts of my video easier to understand by abstracting them with motion graphics. And sometimes when I'm editing, I notice that I have nothing that really fits to a specific part of my voiceover, so I just create an animation in Cavalry for that part and export it to use it in DaVinci Resolve. I especially did these animations for parts where I was kinda showcasing the behavior of a third party, so something that should be seen as something not related to myself or the viewer. Sometimes also I want to further stylize my video, for example assigning a specific color palette to each chapter, and styling each Cavalry animation accordingly really helped me achieving that. Especially because color palettes are easy to use in Cavalry. Like, the color picker can be set up to display different harmonics, adding your colors to palettes and using colors from the palettes is super easy, and additionally Cavalry supports a bunch of formats to import color palettes. Like, these are some I've downloaded and imported into Cavalry. So let's tackle the elephant in the room, which is the pricing. Every time I see Cavalry being mentioned, there are a lot of voices on how the pricing instantly made them lose interest in the software. But I can't stress enough how I exclusively use the free version without really feeling limited by it. The pricing of the Pro version is advertised as £16 a month, but they only offer an annual subscription, meaning you're forced to pay for an entire year in advance, which means we're now at £192 a year or £228 a year if you're inside the EU. On top of that, they only accept credit cards as a payment option. Do you guys own credit cards? Like, I don't own one. Actually, how many people own a credit card? Let me look this up. The average American holds 3.9 credit cards in their wallet? Who provided these statistics? Fucking MasterCard? I've also visited their Discord to see if they have any plans on changing their pricing. The only thing I found is that even though many people asked for a monthly option, they don't have any plans to implement this. And this was over 2 years ago. By the way, I never saw people actively and repeatedly asking for a monthly subscription model. That's nuts. If they would have gone for another pricing and additional payment options, I would have probably already spent money on it, and so do many other people. How were they able to create such a user-friendly and fantastic software, but then proceeded to screw up the distribution that bad? However, I still highly encourage you to try the free version. There are multiple limitations, but I have been able to work with the capabilities of a free version just fine. And some of the pro features feel very gimmicky anyway. Like in my opinion, you don't like any essential features in the free version, except for the resolution, which is capped to 180p, but honestly, you can just upscale it. Like, this entire video you're watching right here was rendered in 1080p and then upscaled to 4K. And did you notice it in any way? Also, audio export is not possible in the free version. But like, even if you're syncing something in Cavalry to audio, which is still possible in the free version, you can just export it without audio and then add the audio to the render in another software like DaVinci Resolve. So yes, I can't stress enough that the free version is still completely worth to check out and fall in love with. You won't regret it. If you want to see more software reviews, make sure to leave a subscription. I promise you, it's not an annual one.